The dust on planet Solari blew like golden smoke. Human engineer Jack Turner wiped sweat from his brow as he repaired the alien water extractor. He had been working for hours under the twin suns, helping the locals fix the broken system that supplied water to their village. They had no idea how it worked, but Jack did. The Zolarians were small, soft-skinned aliens with big glowing eyes and blue-tinted skin. They watched Jack with awe as he moved through wires and panels with ease. They called him Fixer Man with admiration, but none watched him closer than little Ilani. She was only 5 Zolari cycles old, barely up to Jack's knees. With bright purple eyes and tiny horns on her head, she followed him like a shadow. "Why you help us, human?" she asked, tilting her head. Jack laughed. "Because I can, kid." She smiled wide, revealing tiny sharp teeth. "You kind," she said, touching his hand gently. "You marry me when I grow big?" Jack froze for a second, surprised by her innocent question. The other aliens giggled. Even her mother chuckled softly from the background. Jack kneeled down and ruffled Alani's hair. "Sure thing, sweetheart," he said jokingly. "When you grow up and come find me, I'll marry you." The whole village laughed, and so did Jack. It was a sweet moment. One of those things you say to make a child smile. He never imagined she'd take it seriously. But Alani didn't laugh. She looked up at him, wide-eyed and serious. "Promise?" she asked. Jack, still smiling, made a small salute with 2 fingers and said, "Promise." That night, the village held a small feast for Jack to thank him. They offered him strange fruits and glowing drinks. Music filled the air, and Alani danced around him with joy. Jack felt warmth, not just from the fire, but from the people around him. He had traveled many planets, seen many species, but never felt so welcome, so needed. Alani sat beside him near the fire, her little fingers drawing symbols in the dirt. She looked up and whispered, "I remember, promise." Jack just chuckled. "You're something else, kid." Before dawn, his work was done. He packed his tools and prepared to leave. The whole village came to say goodbye. Alani stood at the edge of the crowd, her eyes watery. Jack bent down and handed her a tiny human coin. "Keep this," he said. "If you ever find me again, show me this and I'll remember." She clutched it tight to her chest, nodding silently. He turned and boarded his transport. As the ship lifted into the sky, Alani whispered to the wind, "I'll grow fast, human, and I will find you." Years passed, and Jack forgot. He moved from job to job, planet to planet, helping colonies, fixing systems, making money. The galaxy was big, and his life was always moving. That small village on planet Solari became a distant memory, and so did the little alien girl with purple eyes. To him, it had been just a funny moment in a kind day. But to her, it was everything. Deep in the wild mountains of Solari, Alani trained. Her people called her obsessed. Strange, too focused. But she remembered the day clearly, every word, every laugh, every promise. She kept the coin close at all times, hanging from a necklace around her neck, and every night, under the glowing moons, she looked at the stars and whispered, "Wait for me, human." Because for her, the joke was never just a joke. It was destiny, and destiny never forgets. Asterisk years passed on planet Solari, like soft winds blowing over sand. But Alani's heart stayed firm like stone. She grew from a small girl into a tall and graceful young warrior. Her purple eyes remained sharp, and her memory even sharper every day. She trained harder than the others. While her friends laughed and played, she learned to fight. She studied space charts, learned human languages, and stared at the old coin Jack gave her like it was treasure. The elders warned her, "He is just a human, little one. They forget quickly, they move on." But Alani didn't care. She remembered the fire, the way he smiled, the way his big hand had touched her head gently. He had said, "Promise," and that word became her world. Alani was not just waiting, she was preparing. Her people called her strange, but she did not stop. She built her own small ship, piece by piece, each part a step closer to her promise. The sky above Solari was filled with stars, and one of them she believed would lead her to him. She whispered to the night, "Don't forget me." Jack Turner. Meanwhile, far away on a mining colony called Varney's 9, Jack lived a tired life. The galaxy had worn him down. His hair had a bit of gray, and his smile had grown dull. He worked long shifts fixing underground systems. Machines always broke. People always complained. No one ever thanked him the way that village once did. He had forgotten what it felt like to matter. He sat alone most nights, watching old recordings of stars and ships. He had no wife, no children, just work and silence. The coin he had given away? He didn't even remember it. To him, it had been a playful gesture. To a child with big eyes and a silly idea. He had no idea she was coming, back on Zalari. Elani finished her final test. She stood in front of the ancient council, her armor glowing softly. "I am ready," she said. They stared at her with disbelief. "You would chase a human across the galaxy for a joke?" "It was not a joke to me," she said simply. Her voice was calm but strong. She held up the coin around her neck. "He said to come find him when I grow up. I have." The council had no answer. They could only watch as she walked toward her ship. Elani climbed into the cockpit. The ship roared to life, systems glowing blue. Her heart beat fast. She had waited many years for this day. The ship launched into the sky, leaving the only home she had ever known. But her heart had already left that planet long ago. She followed star charts, chasing old rumors and station logs. She looked for any trace of Jack Turner. One day, in a dusty trade station, she found it. A miner mentioned a human engineer on Varney's 9. "He's old now," the miner said. "Worn down, lives alone." But Elani's eyes lit up like stars. "That's him," she whispered. Her ship turned toward the outer rim, toward the forgotten colony where her future waited. She smiled. For the first time in many moons, it took 2 more cycles to reach Varney's 9. The planet was gray and cold, full of rock and machines. Elani landed without alert, her ship hidden under camouflage. She stepped out, her cloak flowing behind her. Miners looked up as she walked past. Alien visitors were rare here, especially ones as beautiful and bold as her. She ignored the stares, moving like a hunter, following the scent of a memory. Finally, outside a rusted engineering bay, she stopped. She saw him, his back bent over a console, his hands still working, but slower than before. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. Jack turned as he heard the door hiss open. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, time froze. He saw a tall alien woman, glowing eyes, a necklace with a human coin. She stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "You promised," she said. Jack blinked, confused. "Excuse me." She took the coin off her neck and placed it in his hand. "You gave this to me. You said, 'Come find me when you grow up.' Well, I'm here." Jack stared at the coin, and suddenly, something old inside him stirred. A forgotten fire, a distant smile, a child's voice saying, "Promise?" He didn't speak. He couldn't, because for the first time in many years, he felt like he mattered again. Jack stood frozen, holding the coin in his hand. His fingers trembled slightly, as if the small metal disc carried the weight of a forgotten promise. The alien woman before him stood tall, proud, her cloak billowing slightly from the vents. Breeze. She was beautiful in a way Jack couldn't explain, elegant, but strong. Alien but familiar. "I don't understand," he said quietly. She didn't blink. Her glowing purple eyes locked onto his. "You said to come find you when I grow up," she said again. "And I did." Jack looked at her, really looked. Her features seemed familiar, the curve of her eyes, the pattern on her skin. Something deep in his memory tried to wake up, but his mind was clouded by time, fatigue, and disbelief. "You're Elani?" he asked slowly. She gave a small nod. "Yes." Jack let out a breath, almost a laugh, part shock, part confusion. "You were just a child," he whispered, "and you made a promise." She replied. Her voice was calm, but her words were sharp like a blade. Jack leaned back against the table, rubbing his forehead. "That was years ago," he said. You didn't think I would remember, Alani finished for him. Jack nodded slowly. No one ever does, she added, almost to herself. But I did. There was silence between them, filled only by the quiet hum of the machines. Alani stepped forward slowly. You mattered to me, she said. When no one else came to help, you did. Jack looked at the coin again. He remembered the dusty village, the warm fire, the little girl dancing around him, asking silly questions. It had all felt like a sweet moment, a memory to smile at and forget. But for her, it had been everything. I searched for you, she said. I studied human speech, culture, maps, just to find your name in the stars. Jack felt something twist in his chest. She wasn't here for fun or curiosity. She was here because of him. He turned away, unable to meet her eyes. I'm not the man you remember, he said quietly. I didn't come for who you were. Alani answered. I came because of what you did. Jack chuckled sadly. I'm just a tired old engineer now. You're still the one who saved my people, she replied. That doesn't fade. Jack didn't know what to say. He had faced machines, fires, blackouts, but never something like this. Outside the workshop, curious miners started gathering. Whispers filled the air. An alien beauty demanding a man's promise. Some laughed, others stared in disbelief, but Alani didn't care. Jack noticed the growing crowd. He sighed and walked to the door. Let's go somewhere quiet, he said. She followed him without a word. They walked across the colony, past metal towers and steaming vents, until they reached a high ridge that overlooked the valley. There, under a dull red sky, they sat. Jack finally found the courage to speak. I've lived a life without purpose, he said, jumping from one place to another, trying to fix things, trying to forget. She looked at him softly. Why forget? Because I thought I was alone, Jack said. No family, no anchor, just stars and silence. Alani reached into her cloak and pulled out a small hologram disc. She activated it, and the image of young Jack and child Alani appeared. The image showed him kneeling, giving her the coin. The audio crackled with his voice. Come find me when you grow up. Jack stared at it, stunned. I kept this with me, she said, every day. His chest ached with emotion. He had forgotten, but she had carried it like a flame. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Say nothing, she said. Just remember. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, Jack realized he felt something he hadn't in years. Hope, not because he believed in fate or destiny, but because someone believed in him. He turned to her slowly. I don't know what comes next, he said. Alani smiled. A rare and beautiful thing. Then let's find out together, below. The ridge, the lights of the colony flickered on, but up there, above them, the stars began to shine brighter. And for the first time in a long time, Jack looked up, not down, because someone had returned for him, not for who he was, but for what he meant. A promise forgotten by one, remembered by another. Jack didn't sleep that night. He sat on his small metal bed, holding the coin between his fingers. Outside, the colony was quiet, but inside his mind, a storm was spinning. She had really come. For him, across stars and years, he had tried to convince himself it was just a silly childhood memory, that she would realize it was nothing and leave. But Alani didn't leave. She was still here, and she acted like she belonged beside him. The next morning, Jack found her waiting by the colony gates. Her cloak flowed like water, and her eyes searched the horizon. She looked calm, patient, not in a hurry to leave. Why are you still here? He asked her. She turned and smiled gently. Because I told you, I came for you. Jack sighed, scratching the back of his head. Look, Alani, I'm not the same man anymore. You're still the one who gave me hope, she replied. You may have forgotten me, but I never forgot you. He shook his head, confused and tired. People don't just chase a promise like this. I'm not people, she said with a smirk. I'm Zalari. And when a Zalari girl gives her word, it becomes her future. Jack didn't know whether to laugh or feel guilty. That day, she followed him to the repair station. She asked about the machines, the wiring, the colony systems. Jack was surprised by how quickly she learned. She even helped fix a broken coolant pipe using only observation. "You're not just a dreamer," he said, wiping grease from his hands. "You're sharp." "I had to be," she answered. "To cross galaxies, you need more than hope. Soon." The other workers noticed her presence. They whispered behind her back. Some joked, some mocked. "Hey Jack," one said, "your alien bride still following you?" Jack ignored them at first, but it started to wear him down. He told Alani, "You don't have to stay here. This place isn't kind." She looked at him with quiet strength. "I didn't come for kindness," she said. "I came for you." That night, they sat together outside the colony. The stars above them stretched across the sky like a glowing river. Alani looked up and said, "Do you know what I used to do as a child?" Jack looked at her. "No. I would stare at the stars and guess which one you were under." She said, "Sometimes I'd whisper your name and hope the wind would carry it to you." Jack felt a lump in his throat. He had never been anyone's dream before, and now this woman, this warrior, was sitting beside him, not asking for anything but his word. "I don't know how to be that man anymore," he said slowly. "Alani turned to him, then become someone new with me." He stared into her eyes, saw no lies, no tricks, only truth. And still he was afraid. "You might regret it," he warned. "I might disappoint you." She smiled softly. "I've waited this long," she said. "I think I can survive a little disappointment." In the following days, Alani made herself useful. She helped the mechanics, organized supply crates, even fought off a wild crawler near the generator zone. The miners stopped laughing. They started respecting her. And slowly, respecting Jack too. One old technician whispered to Jack, "Never thought I'd see the day someone looked at you like that." Jack gave a half smile. "Neither did I." But deep inside, he still wrestled with guilt and doubt. She had built her life on a promise he made without meaning it. Could that really lead to something true? Or was she chasing a shadow? One evening, Alani found him sitting near the cliff again. He didn't speak, but she sat beside him anyway. After a while, he said, "You deserve more than a tired old man who forgot you." She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Maybe, but I chose you, Jack Turner." He turned to her. "Why?" "Because when I was a scared little girl," she whispered, "you made me feel safe. And even now in this rough and cold place, you still look at me with care, not fear, not disgust, just care." Jack didn't know what to say, so instead of speaking, he reached into his pocket, took out the coin, and gently placed it back in her hand. "I remember now," he said. Her eyes shimmered, and for the first time since she arrived, he smiled with something real behind it, not because he believed in fate, but because he didn't want her to leave, and maybe, just maybe, he wanted to stay too. The peace didn't last long. 3 days after Jack returned the coin to Alani, the sky above Varney's 9 cracked with thunder. Not natural thunder, but the sound of warships entering orbit. Big, dark ships shaped like blades hovered above the colony, their symbols unfamiliar to the humans. Jack stood outside the station, shielding his eyes from the bright lights. Alani walked beside him, her face calm, but her eyes sharp. "That's them," she said quietly. "The ones who want to take me back." Jack turned to her, confused and alarmed. "Take you back? Who?" "My clan," she said. "The elders sent them to retrieve me. They think I've dishonored tradition by chasing you." Before he could respond, a voice boomed from the sky. "All citizens of Varna's 9 remain inside. This is a Zilari retrieval operation. The one called Alani must return to her people immediately." Miners scrambled into buildings, doors slammed shut, but Jack didn't move. And neither did Alani. She stood tall, her arms at her sides, her cloak rising with the wind. "They're not here to talk," she said. Jack looked at her with concern. "Will they attack?" "If I resist," she replied, "they will." Took a step closer. "Then we don't let you go." She turned to him, surprised. You're choosing to stand against them? Jack nodded. I may be just an engineer, but I'm not going to let anyone take you by force. I already forgot you once. I won't make that mistake again. Alanie's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. This could get dangerous. She warned. I've seen worse, Jack replied, forcing a grin. Remember, I survived Zilari plumbing. That made her chuckle, even with warships above their heads soon. The ships landed sleek black vessels with glowing red windows. Tall armored Zilari soldiers stepped out, each one carrying plasma weapons. They formed a half-circle around the colony square. Their leader stepped forward, helmet under one arm, eyes burning with anger. Elani, daughter of Clan Veyrin, he called. You have broken the vow of silence and chased a human like a wild animal. Return now, or be taken by force. Elani didn't flinch. I am not property. She said, I followed my heart, not your rules. You followed weakness, the leader growled. You shame your bloodline. Jack stepped in front of her. You want her, you go through me, he said. The soldiers raised their weapons. The humans inside the colony watched through cracks in the walls, terrified. She is one of us now. Jack said loudly, and I won't let anyone take her without a fight. The leader sneered. A human dares to speak to a warrior of the Zilari. I'm not just speaking, Jack replied. I'm protecting someone I care about. Elani stepped beside him, her blade humming to life. If you want a battle, Commander, you'll get one. The soldiers hesitated, not because they feared the human, but because they saw the fire in Alanie's eyes, the fire of someone who had chosen her own path, and would not be dragged back without resistance. The leader signaled. 2 soldiers lunged forward. Elani moved like lightning, dodging, twisting, disarming one in seconds. Jack grabbed a wrench, his only weapon, and swung it hard into the other's armor. The crowd inside gasped. A miner whispered, He's actually fighting for her. Plasma blasts flew through the air. Sparks burst from metal walls. Lights flickered. Elani rolled to cover, pulling Jack with her. This is madness. He shouted over the noise. This is love, she shouted back. He laughed, even as explosions shook the ground. More humans joined in, miners with tools, engineers with welding torches, not warriors but protectors. The colony stood behind Jack and Elani. Together, they pushed the attackers back inch by inch. The Zilari soldiers finally pulled away, beaten and stunned. Their commander growled. This is not over. Elani stepped forward, weapon at her side. No, it is, she said firmly. I chose my future, and I choose it again, right here. She looked at Jack. And I choose him. The ships rose into the sky. The colony square was filled with smoke and silence. Then, a single clap, followed by more, and then cheers. A human woman shouted, She's one of us now. And Jack, standing beside Elani, covered in dust and sweat, felt something powerful grow inside him. Not fear, not doubt, but pride. Because she had fought for him, and now he would never let her fight alone again. The battle was over, but its echoes remained. The colony on Varney's 9 was changed forever. People no longer looked at Elani like a stranger. Now they saw her as someone who had bled and fought for their home. Jack sat in the medical bay with a bandage across his shoulder. The plasma blast had grazed him, nothing serious. But Elani stayed close, watching over him like a silent guard. He tried to act normal, but his heart was no longer the same. He looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. The way she stood strong, how her eyes never wavered, and most of all, how she looked at him not like a hero, but like he mattered, like she truly believed in him. Jack had spent years drifting through life, fixing machines, ignoring people, forgetting memories. But now those forgotten pieces were coming back, not just in his mind, but in his heart. Late one night, Jack sat alone near the colony ridge. He stared at the stars, the same stars she used to whisper his name under. He held the coin again, rubbing his thumb across its surface. He remembered her tiny fingers grabbing it, her voice saying, Promise? He didn't laugh this time. He didn't treat it like a joke. Because now, it wasn't just a memory, it was something alive. Elani joined him. Sitting quietly beside him, the stars reflected in her eyes. "You're thinking again," she said. Softly, "I do that sometimes," he replied with a small smile. "About what?" "About a little girl who believed in something I didn't," he said. "And about a woman who still does." She turned to him, her face unreadable but warm. "I remember you," Jack said slowly. "Back then you were just a child, but your eyes, they haven't changed." Elani touched the coin still hanging around her neck. "I never gave up," she said. "Not once." "I know," Jack whispered. "And I'm sorry it took me so long." She shook her head. "You came back to me in the only way that matters. You stood beside me when it counted." "I would do it again," Jack said, and he meant it. "Every word." "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of breaking your heart, of not being enough." She reached out and took his hand. "You don't need to be perfect, Jack. You just need to be here." And for the first time in a very long time, Jack wanted to stay, not just on the planet, but with her. The next day, the colony council gathered. They offered Elani a place as official colony protector, an alien warrior becoming part of a human world. It had never been done before, but no one disagreed. They had seen what she was willing to fight for, and more than that, they had seen Jack change. He was no longer the quiet fixer with no purpose. Now he stood straighter, spoke with confidence, because someone believed in him, and he had started believing too. Elani accepted the offer, but with one condition. "I don't want a rank," she said. "I want to stand beside Jack." Later that evening, she found Jack in the workshop. He was fixing a broken mining drone, but paused when he saw her. "I've been thinking," he said. "That's dangerous," she joked. He laughed, then said seriously, "I want to rebuild the coin." "What do you mean?" she asked. "I want to melt it down and make something new." He pulled out a tiny ring mold from his workbench. "Something stronger, something that lasts," he said. Her eyes widened slightly. "Jack, I know I'm not the man you dreamed of," he said, "but I want to try, not just because of a promise, but because I want to be the man who keeps it." She said nothing. She just walked forward and hugged him tightly. He didn't hesitate. He hugged her back, not as a friend, not as a stranger, but as something more. From that day forward, they worked side by side. She protected the colony, and he fixed everything that broke. But more importantly, they fixed something inside each other. Elani had crossed galaxies for a promise, and Jack had finally remembered why he made it. Not just because of kindness, but because something in her had called to something deep inside him, and now that something was awake, not just in memory, but in love. The coin was gone now. In its place sat a small ring made of mixed metals, half human steel, half Shalari crystal. It shimmered under the soft lights of Varney's 9 ceremony hall. Elani held it in her hand, staring at it like it carried the weight of galaxies. Today was the day. After all the battles, silence, confusion, and waiting, Jack had kept his promise, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The colony had never hosted anything like this before. Humans and Zalari stood side by side, adjusting their clothes, blinking at the strange customs of the other. Miners wore suits for the first time. Engineers cleaned up grease from their hands, and in the center of it all stood Jack. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, his boots still dusty, but his smile was real. He looked nervous, but happy, the kind of happy he didn't think he'd feel. Again, Elani walked down the platform slowly, her warrior armor replaced with ceremonial robes. Her people watched from the far end of the hall, unsure at first, but no longer protesting. Because she had proven herself not with words, but with action. She had not only survived the stars, she had crossed them for love, and that kind of story could not be denied. Not even by the most stubborn of elders. Jack stepped forward as she reached him. He took the ring and held it up. "I once made a joke," he said, his voice clear across the speakers, "but someone took it seriously. And because she did, my life changed. She reminded me what it means to matter to someone, to be remembered, not for being perfect, but for being kind. And today, I don't make a joke. I make a vow. Alina's eyes shimmered. She took his hand and said, I chased a promise because I believed in it, even when no one else did. Even when he forgot, she smiled. Now he remembers, and that's all I ever wanted. She leaned forward slightly and whispered, Also, I won the bet with my mother. Jack blinked, confused. What bet? She said you'd never remember, Jack laughed. Guess I owe her a drink. Everyone laughed with them, human and Zalari alike. They exchanged the ring made from old memory and new hope. And just like that, the ceremony was done, but it didn't feel small. It felt like the closing of one galaxy and the opening of another. News of their union spread fast, across stations, colonies, even to the inner core planets. A human and a Zalari warrior, once strangers, now partners. A story of hope in a time when people had started to forget how to believe. They didn't become rulers or legends. They didn't build empires or destroy armies. They simply stayed on Varney's 9, helping, protecting, living. Elani trained young humans in defense. Jack started a school to teach alien tech repair. They built things together, tools, homes, bridges. But the most important thing they built was trust. One evening, long after the wedding, they sat on the colony ridge again. Same stars, same view. Jack held her hand and asked, Do you ever regret chasing me? Elani shook her head. I would do it again, even if you forgot me forever. Yes, she said, because love doesn't wait for memory. He turned to her and smiled. Good, he whispered, because I'll never forget again. And above them, the stars burned quietly, the same stars she had whispered to as a child, the same stars he once fixed systems beneath without meaning. Now they watched over a promise made in laughter, a promise forgotten, a promise remembered, and finally, a promise kept.